thought I'd take some time to share with you a little bit about the way in which my faith moved from being a childhood faith to an adult faith. You know, I was born in 1957, and so that's about 52 years ago now for us. And I grew up in the Reformed Church. There was a church on Long Island called the First Reformed Church of West Sayville, and grew up there from a baby. You know, I was baptized there as a child, and many of you have been baptized, perhaps even in this church. Maybe even I've baptized some of you as you have been here over the years. And so I grew up in that church, and you know, I went to all the different things that took place in it, and went through a process like this when I was about in 7th or 8th grade, met with the minister and met with a group of people in one of the upstairs rooms. Our church had a special room where the consistory met. That's the people, the elders and deacons who provide leadership to the church. And we would go up to this room, and it was a dark room, it was up the big stairs, and it was very impressive for us as kids. And so they said, you need to do this, you need to join the church. And we were like, well, I guess we do then. So we joined the church. But it was about 2 years later, when I was getting ready to go into high school, that a group of our young people decided that we were going to try to reach out into the community. This was about 1973, and it's part of a time in the history of the church, recent history of the church, called the Jesus People days. And it was a time when Christian music was just beginning to have contemporary Christian music. There was a guy named Larry Norman. You might want to look him up. He just recently died, in fact. But he was in California, and he was one of the early people who developed new music for the church. Instead of the hymn books that I grew up with, Larry Norman and other groups developed modern music. So there's a whole movement, a very strong Christian movement among young people, teenagers at that time. And in 1973, some of our older youth in the youth group got involved in this, and they were all of a sudden very interested in faith. And it wasn't just a go-to-church faith, but it was a follow Jesus faith. And so us younger kids in high school just went along with it. We didn't know what this was all about. And so they said, we're going to start a coffee house where we, on Friday nights, where we open up part of the church. We have food and coffee and brownies and cake, like we do a coffee hour. And we're just going to invite the kids in from the community to come and to see what we do. And we're going to play this new Christian music that there is, and we're going to talk to people about God and faith. And so we thought, okay, that sounds like something you should do in a church, and so we decided to do it. And as the kids came in, we were asked to talk with them about faith, about God, and about Jesus. And I guess they assumed that because we grew up in the church, we knew how to do that, and we'd be able to do that. And so I still remember this very important time for me when the older youth handed me a Bible and gave it to me and said, go now and talk to somebody about God. So I took this Bible and I went out down the street a little ways to where there was a street light. It was at night, and a bunch of young people were sitting under, teenagers were sitting under a light post. And I took the Bible and I went to them and I said, do you believe in God? It seemed, you know, I didn't know what to say. And they said, no, do you? And I was caught short because I'd never talked with people about God who didn't believe in God. If you talk to people about God in Sunday school, they all believe in God, so there's no big problem. But they didn't believe in God. And so, do you? And no one had ever, somehow that question had never hit me like that. Do I believe in God? Can I talk about God outside of church? Is God, just in the church, or is God outside the church? And so I had a real crisis going on. So I didn't know what to say. So I walked back to the youth meeting, and I said to my friends there, this happened to me, and I don't know if I believe in God or not. And so a couple of them and I sat down, and we talked for a while. And they said, why don't we just pray? Why don't we pray together? And you just pray what you want to pray to God. And so I did. I prayed a prayer, and I prayed, God, I don't know if you're real or not, but if you are, I want to know you, and I want to follow you. And it's hard to describe just what happened at that point, but there was some way in which a faith started in a new place in my life, because I reached out. I was seeking after God in a new way, and it's just something that changed everything from my life from that point on. And I worked with the youth group, stayed in the youth group for 2 years. We had a fantastic youth group in the church there. We had about 60 kids coming out all the time. We had met all through the week. We went to other churches. We went to wherever there was music, where there was a Bible study, wherever there was youth gathering, we went. It was great. And after about 2 years, the senior youth in the group graduated. And so they were gone, and there were like 5 of us left. And so we didn't have much of a youth group the rest of my high school years, but we went around and continued to go to other groups. And kind of the focus of the center of youth ministry kept moving between different churches. And so we went. But there were some good youth leaders. Then, it's very interesting to me as I look back now, being a pastor, that the pastor of the church had nothing to do with this. It was all led by the youth people, the young people in the church, and a couple of the youth leaders. And the minister did his thing on Sunday, and he preached, and we all went back to our church on Sunday. But it's always interesting for me to look back and think about that, the way that provided a base for me, but that movement into a new faith had to come from somewhere else. One of the things I got interested in at that point in my life was missions. I began to learn that there were people who were going out around the world in some very difficult places who were telling others the story about Jesus, that God sent His Son into the world, that Jesus came to forgive our sin and open up a new relationship with God. And I got very interested in that. I was flying airplanes when I was in high school. It was something that I did with my summer earnings from digging clams on the Great South Bay. And I took that money and I learned to fly airplanes. So I was flying airplanes before I could even drive a car. I used to ride my bicycle to the airport on Long Island, fly to New Hampshire, and then fly back and then ride my bicycle home. So it's a very interesting time. There were missionaries who flew airplanes. And so I took a strong interest in that, and I went first to college to go be a missionary aviation person, to learn radios, to learn to repair aircraft, to learn to fly aircraft into very difficult areas of the world, to support missionaries. And one of the things that this is a part of an aircraft that I made when I was studying aircraft maintenance years ago. And I learned to rivet, I learned to weld, I learned to work sheet metal, learned to repair radios, learned to repair engines, all kinds of things that would help me to be a person who could be on the mission field and who could help share the message that I had discovered had just changed my whole life. My whole life became focused around the fact that God had called me and God loved me so much, and I had a future, and God kept offering me every day some new things to discover. So I wanted to share that, and went off to school to a college in Texas for a couple of years to do that. Well, a lot of things happened. I had time in the Marine Corps while I was there, and aviation in the Marine Corps, and was going to head in that direction, get some training for flight. And then I had a shop accident in the shop where we make these things. I had a tool blew up and almost took my eye out. That kind of changed my direction a little bit. And so went into education. At that point I couldn't fly quite in the military because my eye was not right anymore, and ended up in education, taught high school for a while, but always had this desire to serve in mission somehow. So my wife and I went off to school. Carol and I were married while I was teaching high school in Irvington. Went off to a place to prepare for missionary service together. And as we did that, we began to learn that we knew absolutely nothing about faith. As we got to a school where they studied the Bible and you learned the original languages of the Bible, we just realized that we thought we knew a lot, and we didn't know anything. And so we began to study more, stayed in school for a couple of years there in South Carolina, had our children, Ben, Jen, and John, and decided that we needed to stay in the States for a while, in the United States, and thought, well then, maybe the church is a place where we could do mission. And so I became a minister in the Reformed Church in America that I'd grown up in, and I've been doing that for 25 years now. And you know, I don't know if we'll ever get to the mission field, but you know, it's been a time for me to continue that moment of conversion for me that ignited a real faith. Just changed everything, and my whole life from that point on in 1973 has been wrapped up in how can I bring into the world this spirit of Christ, this life, this energy that I experienced there. And so I try to do that through preaching, and I try to do that through what goes on in the church. The church is a little bit different from the mission field. You know, you have many more different kinds of things to do here, where on the mission field it's focused a little bit differently. But we've been able to help people grow in their faith, and this is one of the ways we do it, by talking and by doing youth ministry and youth membership classes. And you know, I hope that as I've shared this story with you a little bit, that you'll ask yourself maybe those questions too, or you'll put yourself in positions where your faith gets tested a little bit, for you to see, do I really have a faith of my own? Or do I just have a faith because I go to church? Do I just have a faith because my parents had a faith? Or have I come to the point where I've asked God, I've reached out to God, and I've said, God, I want to be in touch with you. And I want to know what you're doing in the world, and I want to be part of it. And it's a wonderful, wonderful gift that God gives us when that happens. So I encourage you to write a little bit about that, maybe to reflect on it, talk with your parents about that, and talk with your children's ministry shepherds about that too, because they probably have a story too of how they have come to a different kind of a faith. And so it's my prayer that through this process, you'll not only join the church, but you'll also discover what it means to have a personal faith in Jesus Christ. And that'll begin to shape the way you live. And so it's my prayer that that'll work for you.